I'm Professor of Political Studies. My field of study is e-governance and digital public services. So together with my team, I study digitalization in government, but also the socio-economic impacts of digitalization for citizens and businesses and society in general. I think what is important to understand is that digitalization, R&D, computers were not unknown to Estonia prior to the 1990s. So already in the Soviet era, Estonia was home to a microelectronics industry. And a lot of experts, engineers, moved from other parts of the then Soviet Union to Estonia. So there was already a foundation of skills and talent. After Estonia had regained its independence in 1991, one of the challenges for its leadership was to think of a core of its economy, but also a core of its identity as a sovereign nation. And with Estonia not having any natural resources and a challenging geographic location, digitalization and the emerging ICT industry came to mind. Also because Big Brother Finland at that time had a big success with Nokia. And this gave a lot of inspiration for instance, the first president to think of what he said. So he asked himself the question, what is our Nokia? So what is the core idea of how Estonia could excel as a country and what could be the basis of its economy? And from that moment on, it embraced digitalization, it embraced ICTs as the core of its economy, but also as a core and leading idea on how public services could be delivered. That inspired many people in Estonia to innovate. And I think was one of the driving ideas behind Estonia, as we now know it, and was driving a lot of innovations about how public services were delivered, how innovation in general takes place, and how basically also in Estonia, businesses and academia and government could work closely together to create this leading idea of digitalization. And over time, well, it has created things that Estonia is nowadays known for. It's one of the very few, if not only, countries in the world that offers internet voting to its entire population, for instance. And of course, there are these interesting quotes about now almost 100% of its public services being available online. I think in Estonia, two types of interactions between government and citizens are important. One is service delivery, and the other thing is internet voting. I think for both, it is important to realize that it is necessary to make this happen for the general population, for ordinary citizens to have an EID, an electronic identification. And this was made compulsory, so it is nowadays compulsory to have one. Well, making this happen was an important milestone. So it is compulsory, but it is also very attractive for citizens in Estonia to have the EID, because it allows Estonian citizens to conduct all kinds of transactions, not only with government, but also with some financial institutions and some other private sector organizations, again, in their day-to-day interactions. Now, making this happen, I think, was a major milestone, but also a major challenge. Well, in Estonia, there are talks about this invisible state. So the concept that citizens, when they ask for specific services, basically they do not have to know what kind of agencies are involved. And in Estonia, there is now the initiative of having the bureaucrat chatbot that allows citizens to use natural language to basically ask for a service or ask for their problem to be dealt with. They don't have to know what kind of agency is involved in providing that service. The AI does it for them. So this makes the government kind of invisible to them. It's not there yet, but it will most likely be available quite soon, which is of course a very interesting application. What we know from our studies also in my group is that what is crucial for citizens to actually start using such a chatbot service is basically privacy concerns and trusting technology. So if we in Estonia want interactions between citizens and governments to happen through, for instance, bureaucrat and the bureaucrat application, these are crucial factors, I would say. Well, part of the narrative, of course, is that AI is being used for service delivery. When we look closer, and we ask ourselves what kind of services are actually being delivered, it's not always services that are beneficial to citizens, but it can also be identification of risks in relation to welfare fraud, for instance, or tax fraud. And then people start to pay more attention. And when we then talk about risks, and I'm now not necessarily talking about Estonia, but more AI applications for instance, law enforcement and identification of fraud in general across countries. We see that it can have major political consequences. It's all about, well, basically the transparency that is applied in AI implementations, but also in accountability. So what I think is a major challenge for AI is to think about how accountability is organized, who is accountable, basically, for how systems are developed, how sometimes micro choices in specific applications are made, and some of them can have major political consequences. Nowadays, this kind of change of accountability are not always thought through. Many of those applications are developed by private sector companies that are not part of our regular change of accountability. And also if you think about developers and the way they operate with AI, in other lines of business, we have vocational associations, professional associations that provide guidelines on how to deal with ethical issues. At this moment, we don't have strong vocational professional associations for ICT developers. And I think this is an important challenge for the future because of, well, what we call system-level bureaucrats in my discipline, how they deal with also the real ethical issues with the development of AI for use in relations between governments and citizens. Well, in 2007, there was a massive series of DDoS attacks on Estonian parliament, banks, government institutions, in the context of a controversy over basically a Soviet-era monument in Tallinn. And I think it had major implications. First of all, the recognition of vulnerability, the idea that cybersecurity risks were not an abstract possibility. It is real. And it was real, and it still is a real, almost tangible threat that Estonia is facing. Countries in the world are facing, but especially Estonia is facing. So that is a political implication. In terms of governance, I think what the 2007 attacks did is that they triggered also previous experiences with dealing with crises, and it also added to an institutional memory, so to speak, over time, through interactions between various agencies, various authorities, that at that time basically had to improvise to provide a coping response. I think over time there have been other cybersecurity incidents, and what is, I think, typical for Estonia is that there's a very clear pattern in which institutional memory was developed and coping responses were developed through learning, through ways in which agencies and parts of government have learned how to work together, how to build capacity, how to deal with those instantiations. And I think that is really unique for Estonia. In 2007, there was a controversy that was located in Tallinn over the relocation of a Soviet-era monument of the bronze soldier. And during that controversy, there was a series of DDoS attacks basically throughout the country. So attacks on websites of the National Parliament, of government institutions, also of private sector companies, which basically resulted in services not being available, and also in general creating an idea that the country was quite vulnerable to external threats. There's a lot of, my understanding is that there are a lot of stories about what happened, who is involved, who is responsible. I don't want to point fingers because basically we don't know. Well, we know, but no, I don't want to be...
To be the one saying.
Yeah. I think it is important to realize in Estonia, also if we think about how data are stored, this is not happening in one centralized place. So we have a rather distributed system of various databases that are connected through an infrastructure. And access to various parts of the database requires all kinds of arrangements between various parts of governments or also with private sector organizations. So in that sense, the picture is slightly more complicated. The idea of having one centralized database, that's not the reality in Estonia. Estonia has learned, and that's a positive thing that came out of a very negative thing, you could say. As over time has really learned how to deal with it, has learned how to build capacity, also in the region with other Baltic states, but also has developed all kinds of structures to work together with NATO, for instance. Again, to tap into existing sources of knowledge, to apply all kinds of routines, and to develop coping responses. So I think it's not really about strategies on paper or policy documents, but rather the routines that have been applied, that have been developed inside governments and in all kinds of networks of government organizations and private sector organizations that make the difference. And again, that is really why Estonia stands out. I think there was a very strong identification. There has always been a very strong identification of Estonians with Ukraine in general, and this has only been intensified with the Russian full-scale invasion in Ukraine. I was here in Estonia when the invasion happened, and I could witness how strong the emotions were of people, and also in politics. So I think Estonia in Europe has always been very much defending Ukraine and support for Ukraine. Well, this was a very strong influence. In academia, at that time, we saw also a lot of support programs for Ukrainian students, for instance, that helped them to continue their studies in Estonia. After 2 years, these were abolished, so it has been calmed. But this is one sign, not necessarily in terms of politics in Tallinn at the national level, but more on a societal level and also at the level of academia, how this support played out. Well, a part of it is cybersecurity. I mean, it has become more prominent, it's more visible. At the same time, Estonia has been a supplier of ideas, of knowledge on how to build e-government services in Ukraine. And this has continued. At the moment I'm working on the Bridge project that specifically supports academic institutions in Ukraine, Kiev School of Economics particularly, to build a research infrastructure and also to improve their knowledge on how to add to the reconstruction of infrastructures and buildings that are affected by the war. And this is a very specific example of how different countries in Europe in this consortium, especially also Estonia, adds to knowledge sharing, adds to the innovation in Ukraine to better deal with war-related damage, for instance. And this particular project also focuses on using participation among citizens in Ukraine to be involved in this war-related reconstruction efforts. Well, indeed, in Estonia we have an e-residency program that allows entrepreneurs from other countries to have a virtual residency and to establish a business. Yes, I think it's one way of looking at it is that the borders of countries become less relevant. However, I think there is also another thing that's going on. And that nowadays we see that various states are also in competition, and it's a competition over who provides the best conditions to those entrepreneurs. So Estonia is now competing with Lithuania and with the US state of Delaware, for instance, and with Ireland to provide the best, to attract the most interesting entrepreneurs to relocate virtually to their countries. I think this is also from a point of, well, I don't know whether it's philosophy, but this is an interesting other way in which states function, not only as territories with a governance model, but also as actors in a global competition for talent and for capital. And I think this is a very interesting development that is now going on with far-reaching implications, potentially. What we are now witnessing is that e-residency is also provided by Singapore, in Ireland, by Delaware. So it is diffusing, so to speak. So it's not unique to Estonia. So yes, it is spreading. At the same time, there is the more normative question, but that is also a political question, whether all of us should want this, and whether there are also perhaps negative consequences, a race to the bottom with tax rates, for instance. This is basically a question that every country that considers offering e-residency should ask itself. So what are the benefits, but also what are the costs? And do we, as global citizens, want our states to compete in a kind of a global economic model? That's a core political question. One of the pictures of e-governance is that people do not talk to civil servants anymore, but rather talk to the government, to the abstract notion of governance, through a website or through an app. Advanced apps, advanced websites, but technologies. And I think this triggers a question on how we would like public encounters to look like. Actual encounters between citizens and their government. The traditional notion of public encounters is that we have civil servants that talk to citizens, sometimes even bend rules, and they have to bend rules to address the real concerns of citizens and the actual problems that citizens are facing. So then we talk about police agents, police officers, we talk about social workers, we talk about judges. They have some discretion, and in the discipline of public administration, this is valued, to have a human face that really takes people's concerns seriously. And one of the big questions for me is what happens if we replace those interactions, those face-to-face, in-person, front-stage interactions with digital interactions? What happens with the discretion that used to have a place and a position in in-person encounters, and then this does not disappear. Discretion is still needed, because in many cases we see that different acts and different procedures have not aligned, are not in alignment. And in in-person encounters, this is addressed in having the conversation, in window clerks, the very abstract notion, bending the rules just a bit, applying discretion. When we talk about chatbots, when we talk about websites, discretion is still there, it's still needed, but it is applied by other people, by system developers, by what we call system-level bureaucrats instead of street-level bureaucrats. This is a notion that until now has not been addressed, nor in research, nor in practice. I think this is going to be one of the core questions in the future when it comes to e-governance.